Hello, my name is Madison Utt, and my research paper was on the women's suffrage. The women's suffrage is the right of women to vote and stand for electoral office. The women's suffrage was also known as the women's rights movement. The women's rights movement was from around 1848 to 1920. The women's rights movement was the start of the feminist movement. Women's suffrage was an important development in American history that is still being fought in today's society. The first gathering for women's rights in the United States was on July 19th and 20th in 1848. It was held in Seneca Falls, New York. The two main organizers for this event were Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott. By holding this event, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott essentially began the women's rights movement. Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton formed the National Women's Suffrage Association in 1869. They formed this campaign for an amendment to the United States Constitution. Also, in that same year, Lucy Stone organized the American Women's Suffrage Association. This was formed to work through the state legislature. The different approaches kept the women's suffrage movement divided until 1890. The two societies then became one and were called the National American Women's Suffrage Association. During the Civil War, however, the women stopped fighting for equality and put their efforts toward the war. After the war, women still desired to be treated equal and have the same rights as men. Women wanted to do men's job at men's pay. They wanted to vote, own property, and not be looked at as the weaker gender. In 1918, President Wilson switched his stand on women's voting rights from objection to support. Wilson also tied the proposed suffrage amendment to America's involvement in World War I, 1914 through 1918. And the increased role women had played in the war efforts when the amendment came up for vote, Wilson addressed the Senate in favor of the suffrage. In 1919, the Senate finally passed the 19th Amendment. After this was passed, the ratification process soon began. On August 26, 1920, 3/4 of the state legislature ratified the 19th Amendment, thus giving American women full voting rights. Women's suffrage was a group of women that banded together and fought for their basic rights and won. They were concerned with voting, equal pay, and owning property. Today, this movement is still alive and thriving, but has branched out to many different subgroups. My information for this research paper came from History.com, the Women's Rights Movement, and National Women's History Museum. Along with my research, I have this photo that really represents the women's suffrage movement. It says, "Women bring all voters into the world, let women vote." And this is a picture of a woman holding her baby. Thank you.